Hey everyone, what is up? Welcome to episode number 1 of the Crushing Classical podcast, redefining a thriving classical music career. I'm Tracy Freelander, and I'm so happy that you're joining us for this interview. Today on the show, we have Jacomo Bairos. Jacomo is the music director of the Amarillo Symphony and the music director and founder of the new music ensemble called Nu Deco Ensemble in Miami. But here's the kicker. In his original career path, he was in pursuit of a position in a professional orchestra as a tuba player. He did achieve this, and then at a certain point decided to switch gears and get up on that podium and run the show. Today, I look forward to this conversation to find out more about what that process was like. Hey, Giacomo, how are you?
Hey, what's going on, Tracy? So good to be here. Thanks for having me on your inaugural podcast. I love it.
Awesome. So, Giacomo, would you please describe yourself to me in one sentence?
Ooh, gosh, this is tough. I am an adventurous, ambitious, and determined classical musician who loves all styles of music and wants to give back the gift of music to everyone who helped him, as well as the next generation of music lovers, period. Something like that.
That is so inspiring. I love it. Oh my gosh. So, Giacomo, you and I met like decades ago.
No, just a couple of years ago. Was it decades? Maybe
just
one
a couple
decade?
of years. We weren't that old. We're not that old. So it was like 1998 or 99
That's
or so.
right. Yeah.
We played in Civic Orchestra, the training orchestra of Chicago Symphony, which was so fun.
Oh my
So
gosh,
fun.
so epic. Wonderful, amazing experience. Definitely.
So much. I loved it. So, what did you end up doing after Civic? Because we kind of lost touch, and I don't know what you did after
Yeah,
that.
well, the Civic Orchestra was an incredible experience, working with all those incredible maestros, Pierre Boulez, the late, great Pierre Boulez, Daniel Barenboim, of course. That experience really fueled my passion and determination to continue my pursuit in orchestral music, and I actually moved on to an orchestra in Spain, which I originally auditioned for a small orchestra in Spain while I was at Juilliard, and I went and played a little bit over there, but it was a little young to take the job, and they called me back up right at the end of my Civic days and asked if I'd be interested to go and play a year over there, and I did, and I went over and moved to La Coruña, Spain, which was northwest Spain, just above Portugal, where I'm from, which was another exciting piece of that puzzle, and I played in the Orquestra Sinfónica de La Coruña, and it was a great experience, and I loved it, and I got to teach in Portugal while I was there and make many new friends and new experiences, and it was amazing.
That's so cool. Sounds like you got fluent in Spanish while you're there.
I would say the fluency is like a level, there's like a sliding scale, but I will say that, one of the great experiences about playing in a foreign orchestra for me was just immersing yourself in a whole new environment and being around all kinds of different musicians from all over Europe that studied and had different training and different fundamental practices. And it just improved and inspired my own, performing, having studied in America at that point only. It was just a really great experience to sort of open up my musical world as well as my human world, because I often tell people you can be an American and go visit another country and another culture, and you kind of take America with you. You're still an American traveling abroad. But when you live in a foreign country and you immerse yourself in their society and do banking there and go to the doctor there and go to restaurants and grocery stores, you learn a lot about not only that culture, but you learn a lot about yourself, and you learn a lot about your home culture, and like how certain things you thought were really great and efficient in your own country actually aren't. And that experience alone is just eye-opening, and it makes you a better human and a better person. And so, the experience of doing that was really compelling and sort of just made me grow, not just on the performing stage, but off the stage as well.
I couldn't agree more. I had an experience playing in Beijing, and it was crazy living there. It's one thing to go and visit, but like you said, going to the grocery store, I had some unusual experiences like that.
I bet. I also played in Shanghai myself, and yeah, you are a foreign entity in China for sure. I mean, I'm
Oh my
sure it's
gosh.
different now,
Yeah.
but like when I went, it was early 2000s, and my goodness, like you are just a wild alien species to them. They're like, huh? And so it was amazing because the musicians are great, the people are great. Oh my gosh, I love the Chinese people and being around them, and very family oriented, like the Latin
Yeah.
people were in Spain as well. It was just very interesting to immerse yourself in those cultures, definitely.
Yeah. So other than cultural reasons, why would you recommend musicians to go and do that and have that experience?
Yeah, well, I think, as you know, it's like literally impossible. Probably the hardest thing a classical musician has to do in this country is to win a job in an orchestra. And it doesn't matter what orchestra, it's just really, really hard. I mean, I have auditions every year in Amarillo, and I feel for everybody who comes in auditions. It's just so
Yeah.
difficult to win a job. It's very, very hard. And the American orchestral audition process is very specific, and it's excerpt centric, and it's very detailed oriented. It's very craft oriented, and sometimes you feel it doesn't have everything to do with music and has everything to do with execution, and that's just hard. And you have to kind of practice that as its own thing. And it's kind of like the Olympics. You're like executing a pose, or executing a routine, or executing a jump, and if you're off by 1 millisecond, you go from gold to nothing, maybe a bronze, and it's the same in America. You miss a few things here and there, even if you're a wonderful musician who deserves and has the right to play with that world class orchestra, you're not going to move on. So it's just really, really hard to get to that level of audition competencies so that you can win big jobs, and like you can get a great experience playing overseas with orchestras that may not be at the level of the Philly, the Boston, New York, but still provide that artistic rewarding experience, and the experience of playing in an orchestra and making music. And I don't know, for me, I just always had an easier time winning auditions in Europe and in Asia than I did in America. And so I highly recommend it for anyone who wants to be a professional musician and play in a professional orchestra to go overseas and get that experience, not just for what it does for you as a human, and experiencing different worlds and different lives of other cultures, but how it informs your music making overall. So I highly recommend it. For me, I put a cap on it. I knew I wanted to be in Spain for just a couple of years, and I was going to come back home and keep trying to be on the audition train in America. But it was one of the most rewarding times of my life, being immersed in that other culture, making music, doing what I loved. Highly recommend it.
Did you get close in America ever getting into an orchestra?
Not really. I mean, I got to the semis of a few jobs. I mean, I took job after job after job, audition
Yeah.
for sure. I would say I don't remember even really getting out of a semifinal round. I remember the New York Philharmonic was like my dream job, and their first round is usually a tape round, which I got through to the next stage of that, and then I got to audition there, and I was on stage, and I played a pretty darn good audition, to be honest, and didn't advance, and I don't know if I would say I was shocked. I was very, very disappointed, but I ended up speaking to someone on the committee a few hours later as I was driving back home to Cincinnati, where I was actually playing with the Cincinnati Symphony at the time as a substitute tuba. Had about a year and a half position with them, and he told me, he's like, Giacomo, you did great. There was a few little moments of intonation and a missed note here and there that just made the committee have pause for concern, and they decided not to bring you along to the next round. And I was like bawling like a baby. It was like my dream job. It was my teacher's position. I loved that orchestra. I subbed in that orchestra many, many times on many occasions. And it just was heartbreaking, and it was like, tears streaming down my face. But I'm not the only one that goes through that. We all have gone through those sort of auditions where you were just so close but so far,
Yeah.
and it takes a toll, and your determination either like bucks up and keeps going, or you move on to other things. And for me, it was going overseas.
Right. No, I totally get that. Getting so close and then no cigar, you know what I'm saying?
Oh
But
my gosh.
so this sort of brings me, yeah, and it just makes me think of the next part that I want to ask you, which is something that I do on the show,
Yeah.
and I call it the fuck this moment, which is
Of
where
course you
you
would.
have Of course I would, right? And so the way I define a fuck this moment is a moment in your life, in your adult life or career, where you're at a crossroads and you know, with what you want to do and what you are doing. And
Right.
then you have a choice to go the safe route or totally something unknown. And
Right.
you choose the unknown route. So did you have a moment like that? Did you have a fuck this
I
moment?
did. I actually really, really did. So speaking of auditioning in Europe, I'm actually a Portuguese citizen as well. So I have a Portuguese passport, which allowed me to take the step of auditioning to certain orchestras that an American normally wouldn't at first. Some countries have more stringent rules, some don't. Germany, I believe, Holland, I believe, you have to have a European passport to audition for their orchestras at first. I think they open it up to their nationals, then they open it up to the EU if they don't have anyone, and then they open it up worldwide. Well, I took the EU portion of the Royal Concertgebouw of Amsterdam principal tuba position, and that's without a doubt, my top three, maybe my favorite orchestra in the entire world. I'm obsessed with that orchestra. I love them to death. They're incredible. And obviously, Amsterdam is one of the coolest cities on the planet. It was just like my dream job of dream jobs. And
Right.
I took the audition, got really far in the audition, played really well. You know, in Europe, you start auditions for the most part with solos. There might be a few orchestras in the States that do that. I'm not sure. But in Europe, you start with a solo. So like a solo, you can really be yourself and you get to hear everything about a musician really quickly, regardless. Excerpts, it's really hard to start on an excerpt, I always found. It doesn't really say who you are personally. It's a craft execution kind of thing. But in Europe, they want to hear a solo first. So there's personality, there's quality of sound, musicianship. It's stuff that you get to say a little more heartfelt, a little more personally. And so that's the way they did it. And I got through the solo round, then I got through the solo and excerpt round, then I got through another round, and then I got to play on the big stage. And, you know, Maris Janssens was in the audience. It was like this whole thing. I was like blown away. And I got pretty far, and I got to like the final, I want to say 4 or 5 people. And I didn't win, but I felt very confident and very happy that I got that far. I didn't expect to get that far, to be honest. I was like, oh my gosh, this was amazing. And yeah, I was disappointed, but also very happy. And like literally a week before that, I had auditioned in New York City as a warm-up for the Singapore Symphony. And they offered me the job. So I told myself, if I don't win Concertgebouw, I'm going to go and take the Singapore Symphony position, which I just was offered, and I'm going to go do it. And at that time, I was playing in the Cincinnati Symphony as a substitute because I had done my master's at Cincinnati, and I was playing for about 2 seasons with that orchestra, and I just had a great relationship with the musicians and the conductors, and just fit really well because the tuba player at the time was really sick, going through health issues, and he liked me as well. And so I just was subbing in that orchestra a lot, but I felt deep down I should have my own orchestra. Like there was a voice in my head that's like, I need my own position, you know? And so I felt like, well, let me go do Singapore, and let me go try that out for a couple of years. And Singapore is an internationally recognized orchestra. It's a fantastic orchestra. So it's different than the little orchestras I was playing in Spain. Not that those were bad. It's just a more reputable, bigger city. It was just more exciting to me. And I had subbed there before and thought the city was amazing. And the colleagues there were fantastic. A lot of Americans, a lot of Europeans. It was a better fit overall. But of course, my heart was set on Concertgebouw. So long story short, I was in Singapore and the Pittsburgh Symphony had an audition. And I was in that audition mode. I was like, okay, my chops are up. My excerpts are good. I know what I'm doing. I just was nearly close to winning the Concertgebouw Orchestra. Let me go take this Pittsburgh audition. Now, the conductor's itch was there. It was starting to come, but it hadn't fully developed yet. So I took this Pittsburgh Symphony audition about 8 months after I arrived in Singapore. You know, it's like just what you do. You keep auditioning until you get where you want to go. And I spent like, I don't know, $3,000 flying 2 huge tubas halfway around the world from Singapore to Pittsburgh. I was jet lagged like crazy. I showed up in Pittsburgh like completely a mess. I hadn't slept in 24 hours. My audition was the next day. It was like a whole thing. I get into the Pittsburgh audition. I literally played 2 excerpts. I think I was on stage maybe 3 minutes, maybe 3.5 minutes. And they're like, thank you. And I was I was confused. I was like, what just happened? They're like, thanks, you're good, bye. And I'm like, what? And that was my fuck this moment for sure. I was like, I just spent all this money. I practiced my ass off. I wasn't that bad. I mean, look, to the Pittsburgh Symphony's credit, they have their own sound. They're incredible. I mean, the Pittsburgh Symphony is one of the hidden gems of America. Like, not many people know how amazing and badass that orchestra is. They're incredible. And sure, they were looking for a very specific thing, and I wasn't it. Fine. But that moment for me was like, I just got so close in concertgebouw. I just won this Singapore Symphony gig. I sound good. What's the problem? Like, 2 exit? Come on, let me play. And it's like, I was like, fuck this. I don't want to do any more auditions. I don't want to do, this is like, I'm done. I'm like, Dungees, like gone. And I went back to Singapore and I was 29, I think, or 28. And I was really like starting to go, what am I doing with my life? Do I want to be a tuba player in Asia, playing, in a great orchestra, but like living over here, away from my family, away from a lot of my friends, and just like, I don't know, growing old and carrying this big old heavy thing on my back. It's just a lot of things just started to add up. And I'm like, I don't know if the deep down thing was like, I don't know if this is fully me. I love music. I love the tuba. I love playing. I love the moments that are really great with an orchestra. But like, there's so many things that come with being an orchestral musician. And I was just starting to think, is this really me? Is this what I feel like I was destined to do? Is this maximizing who I am deep down in my soul? And those questions kept nagging and getting bigger, and I kept answering them with no, it's not, and so that moment in Pittsburgh was kind of the catalyst that kind of started to lead me down the path of maybe conducting or something else is where my heart is meant to be long term, not just playing in an orchestra for the rest of my career. And with 30 around the corner, it's enough time to look behind you and be like, okay, what made me happy? What didn't make me happy? And I started to really question the whole thing in general.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's an incredible story, Giacomo, because that's like a true fuck this moment.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. It totally was. And I won't lie. I mean, it really was the catalyst that led me down the path of what's next. And I didn't know what was next, and conducting didn't really reveal itself yet, but it started down, okay, maybe I could be an artistic administrator for a cool festival, or maybe I could, go into artistic planning with orchestras or orchestra management. I knew I couldn't be away from music, and I did believe I needed to still be in the music making process, but I was ready to try anything out. In fact, when I was in Singapore at that time, I was running the chamber music series they had there. I was in charge of putting the musicians together and choosing the programs and hosting the programs and doing all kinds of fun stuff. We started doubling attendance. I put together a little youth orchestra. I just got my hands really involved in a lot of different things. I was doing stuff for the education and outreach department with the quintet, brass quintet, like writing scripts. And, my buddy Sam Hyken, he and I are now the co-founders and artistic directors of Nu Deco ensemble. We met in Singapore and we started coming up with shows based off rhythm and for the radio shows in Singapore we were doing, as well as it just became a thing where I was really starting to experiment, because I had decided I'm done with auditions. So what's next? And I started to really open my mind and world up to other things.
I love that. So it was almost like a snowball effect. Like you had that moment in Pittsburgh and then you just went back to where you were. I was going to say home, but it was kind of not really home, but it was where you were supposed to be for the next little while. Right. And you used that experience where you were to grow yourself, essentially, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, and it was a combination of, like I said, coming up to 30 and feeling deep down a little unsatisfied, and I wasn't really maximizing who I was as a person, both just my personality and my heart and soul and gut was just all pointing toward a direction of, this is not it for me. This is being in this orchestra, and nothing against Singapore. Again, it's a great orchestra, but they don't rehearse that much, which is on the one hand great, but they had this crazy rehearsal schedule where I think we started on, I want to say we started Wednesdays. We did a Wednesday, a Thursday, and then a Friday dress, and then concerts. It was crazy. Or maybe we started Tuesday. I can't remember. But I just remember having Sunday, Monday, Tuesdays off. And I was like, what do I do? And I got on my little Vespa and would ride around town and do fun things. But then I started to just really get activated in a lot of different things. And it just all started to lead toward conducting slowly but surely. And it was because I was experimenting and trying that led me there.
That's so cool. So what would you say is the hardest part about changing the direction of your career? Once you decided that was what you wanted to do, what would you say that was the most challenging thing about that?
Ooh, uh, was making the leap, just deciding,
Uh-huh.
just making that choice that I'm going to go for it. That was the hardest thing and I did it slowly because, like I said, I started a youth orchestra, a community orchestra, really, and that was fun. And then I had this concert I put together in Singapore. Somehow, the Singapore Symphony allowed me to conduct a big, major, like Latin pops concert. I sort of convinced them to give me the opportunity of conducting the full orchestra in a concert. Like, I mean, look, I was doing well there. I mean, I was running the chamber music series. People liked me. I had a personality. Musicians were generally fond of my work, and I always respected the musicians and took care of them. And I never did anything to like abuse what was being given to me, but I definitely was like ambitious to like try my hand at conducting. And and I went to the Singapore Symphony and I said, hey, I got this idea for a Latin pop show. I know this guy, Nestor Torres. He's a Miami musician. He comes to Singapore a lot because he's a member of the Soka Gakkai Buddhist organization. And they had a big chapter in Singapore, and he would come out and play concerts for them. And he'd bring his flute and play he would put on recordings of electronic music recordings and play with it. And I'm like, God, this guy needs an orchestra to back him up. And look, there's like 4,000 people at his concerts here. Like, I wonder if he'd be interested in playing with the Singapore Symphony. And I approached him and I was like, hey, would you like to play with the orchestra? I'm a conductor, which I wasn't. I completely lied. And he's like, yeah, I would love to. And I'm like, by the way, I'm from Miami, and I saw a masterclass you did in Miami once. He's like, oh my God, that's amazing. And then I went back to the Singapore Symphony and I said, hey, how would you like to do a Latin pops concert? And I would conduct. I've conducted a lot. And they're like, okay, sure. Well, tell us about it. And I said, well, I have this wonderful artist, Nestor Torres. He does this Latin music, and we got these great arrangements, and I think it'd be a really fun thing. And Latin music was kind of the rage at the time in Asia in general. And so the Singapore Symphony thought about it, and they said, okay, look, we know you're doing good work. We know you promote it well, but we need $50,000 commitment, sponsorship to make this happen for you. If you can find us $50,000, we'll do it. Now, I think they were trying to say, get out of my face nicely, because there's no way I was going to find $50,000. But I went back to the Soka Gakkai Buddhist organization. And I said, hey, so we got this concert on there. It's going to happen. The Singapore Symphony agreed to bring Nestor and let me conduct it. We just need $50,000 to do it. And they're like, okay, well, how about we buy out the whole first night of the show at $50,000, and we'll give tickets to our members, and we'll pay for it. And I was like, what? I was like, huh? And I went back to Singapore Symphony and it was like, so I got that 50 grand you wanted. They're like, what? They thought I was kidding. I think they were calling my bluff. They didn't really get it. And you got to know Singaporeans and Asians in general. They don't like to lose face, and they're very loyal people. Yeah. Very loyal. They're very sweet. The general manager was very kind to me. But he wasn't going to lose face. It's just a whole Asian thing. Yeah. And he's like, well, you found the 50 grand. So let me talk it over with the board and I'll come back to you. And I remember a couple days later, I was actually in a quintet rehearsal with my friends. And I got a call and they're like, well, Giacomo, concert's on. We're going to do it. We're going to do it in October, and it's 9 months from now, and let's start planning it and making it happen. And I was like, I was like, are you kidding me? My first conducting experience is going to be with an internationally reputable, major symphony orchestra of Asia. Are you joking? I was like, what the... and then I was like, talk about a oh shit moment. I was like, oh my God, now what do? I got to actually conduct this thing. I don't know how to conduct. I've never conducted a professional orchestra. I mean, I've seen a lot of amazing conductors. I've traveled the world and played in great orchestras everywhere. I know what a good conductor looks like, but I don't know how they become a great conductor. And so, the next 9 months were me plotting and planning, getting the musicians. And it was interesting. Some of the musicians in the orchestra weren't very happy that someone in the orchestra was going to conduct them, and that didn't really go over. So some of them took the concert off, which was fine. That was their right. They didn't have to play. But I called friends of mine from the Malaysia Phil, the Hong Kong Phil, and begged them to come and play, and they did. And, because they came and played, they went and they enjoyed it so much because the experience was great for them. They went back to their orchestra and said, you got to hire Giacomo, bring them out. And I started getting gigs across Asia. I conducted Malaysia Philharmonic after that. So it became this whole thing. But the process of putting it together took 9-10 months. And I was terrified night after night after night. Terrified that I wasn't going to be able to do this. How in the world am I going to conduct? I would wake up in the middle of the night and start conducting in front of the mirror. I'm like, do I look like a conductor? I'm like, Had no idea what I was doing. So the basically it was like, I will regret my entire life if I don't try this one time. I have this incredible opportunity. I've somehow situationally manipulated and got my way into being able to do it. And here it is. Here it's in my face. If I fail and I fall on my face, fine. At least I can say I tried my hand at conducting. It didn't work. I'll go on to be an artistic administrator. I'll go on to do a festival, whatever. I'll figure something out. I'm like resourceful. I'm creative. I don't care. Like, but here is my chance to try it. If it doesn't work, cool. If it does, then great. Let's see where that goes. And so, you know, it didn't fail. The concerts were great. We sold out 3 shows in a row. The musicians were extremely receptive and warm and appreciative, and they all were thanking me for the experience. And, you know, a lot of them said, you got the goods, keep going. And it kind of just snowballed from there after that. I mean, I can go on about what happened next, but that was the moment that like showed me, you know what, if you put your mind to anything and you really dream big enough and you fight for what it is you want and are ambitious and determined enough to follow through with it, you know, you can do whatever you want to do. And that was sort of like that moment for me.
Giacomo, that is the most inspiring story I've heard in years. You know,
Oh, well.
I'm seriously, I'm like, you're telling the story. I'm dancing a jig over here.
Yeah, I was dancing
not
a
even
jig when I
kidding.
got the call. I'll never forget that day. It was amazing, and yeah, it really, that was it. That was the moment that I knew that I had to pursue conducting, and I didn't know
Well,
what the next step was. Luckily, things happened really organically and efficiently, but that was it. That was the moment.
do you know what I love the most about that story too is that when they said, yeah, you can do that, but you have to come back with $50,000, you easily could have said, that's impossible. I guess I can't do it. And you didn't.
Yeah,
You didn't.
because I didn't look at it as like a obstacle. I was just like, okay, all right, I'll be BRB, you know, like just like let me go and figure this out, you know, and
Yeah.
you know, and but the thing is I think honestly one of the talents I feel like I have, to be fair, is like I can see dots in different areas and connect them. And that's what's helped me not only in my conducting career, but with Nu Deco Ensemble and getting that off the ground, is that, you know, I saw the dots in Singapore very clearly. Nestor Torres, people loved him. Soka Gakkai, they loved him. Singapore Symphony, willing to experiment. Latin music was big. Arrangements. I wanted to conduct. I had the energy. Boom, boom, boom. Dot, dot, connect. And I was like, it's all here. Just someone needs to go out and like just kind of like put it together, and it just, you know, that I think that kind of like 3-dimensional process has been very helpful for me in my career and the way it's developing now.
That's phenomenal. So since you're talking about Nu Deco, let's just talk about that now. How did you start that? I mean, what's the first step? You obviously have a little bit of experience because you created that over there in Singapore,
Right.
but then,
Yeah.
then you just, what did you do? Wake up one day and go, you know, I'm going to start a new music ensemble. Or like, how did that start?
I can't take full credit for it because it took a team to get this thing off the ground. But originally, my best friend and musical partner and cohort along on the whole journey has been Samuel Hyken. He and I were both in the Singapore Symphony together, and he and I lived together. We were roommates. We were expats, Americans overseas, both brass players. We hung out all the time. We were like best friends, and you know, it was a very organic thing because he, like me, is very ambitious. He's also extremely talented with his musical writing, and he was a phenomenal trumpet player. He was the youngest trumpet player in the entire history of I think he was the youngest musician in the history of the Singapore Symphony, actually, when he joined. He was like 22 or 3 when he joined. I was like 27 or something. You know, we would always sit around and be like, what's the plight of the orchestra? What's the future of the orchestra going to look like? What kind of music are orchestras going to do? We would always have these philosophical debates. We just really saw eye to eye that orchestras weren't, at least in our mind at the time, orchestras weren't really connecting to people in the way that they could. You know, one of the things I always say is that the orchestra is it's the most incredible vehicle for expression we have in all of humanity. It has the ability to do anything, any type of art, any type of music. I'm talking about any type of music and any type of collaboration. The orchestra is this incredible vehicle of expression that people are just starting to scratch the surface on. And so I've always believed that. I just couldn't articulate it the way I can now. But Sam felt the same way. And at the time, the iMac just came out, which was the computer that Apple sort of reinvented, the desktop computer, and they had that GarageBand program on it. And we'd sit around in the nights in Singapore and just like make music and make beats together and come up with pieces. And we just had a really great time doing it. And we were like, well, what if we started arranging these for brass quintet? And Sam started doing that. And then we're like, well, what if we did this? And what if an orchestra played it? And we just both had a knack. I had a knack for rhythm. He had a knack for harmony. And then we just started putting it together. And it just started to organically grew. And he had a radio show, and we came up with scripts to like talk about rhythm and how to introduce people to classical music. And it just was something that was boiling then. And then my conducting opportunity happened, and he was there when it came through. But then he toured with Verbier one summer and met MTT, Michael Tilson Thomas, and fell in love with him as a conductor and thought, you know what, I think the next step for me would be something like New World. And I was like, yeah, man, you should definitely go to New World. And he got in, of course, because he was great. And he decided to go back to the States and leave Singapore. And that was the best decision he ever made, because that set him on the path of what he's doing now. But I told him before he left, I said, just like I've done here in Singapore, get up close and personal with the organization. Learn every nook and cranny of the New World Symphony. Get in there, man. Like, learn about the fundraising, learn about the promoting, learn about the things they do off-site that aren't on the stage. Learn about, like, write music for musicians. Like, just keep arranging. Just really dig in. Do education things. Be a person that adds a lot to that orchestra and do something there. Like, really use that as a tool to develop your art and craft and who you are as an artist. And he did. And he started like arranging for like Miami like artists and promoters, and he started doing like events outside of New World for New World or Friends of New World and other things. And he just started getting known as someone who could like really do some quality things. And then my conducting career like sort of blasted off, and parallel with his writing career, I got into the Peabody Conservatory after that, and started studying conducting in earnest while he started at Singapore. And being from Miami, I would always be home in Miami and visiting with him because New World's in Miami, and we'd still keep these conversations going. How can we do this? How can we do that? And eventually I got asked to do a Pops concert in Miami. It fell through because of funding, but it started this sort of effect of, let's see if we can put an orchestra together to make something happen. Well, we went to a fundraiser, and we went to an organization to ask for money, and then they ended up stealing the idea and took it from us, and they did it themselves. And they did it poorly and didn't know what they were doing, and it failed. But it was kind of like a punch in the gut. And I was like, you know what? I need to go study conducting the right way, get my name out there, learn how to conduct, get a job, really do this, and then come back to Miami a couple of years later and start something. And same with Sam. Sam was like, I need to like figure myself up. He was going through his own journey of, am I going to be a professional trumpet player? Am I going to be a writer? Am I going to be a orchestrator? What am I going to do? And he had his hands in a lot of different pies, and eventually he settled in on what he's doing now, which is mostly composing, and also now he's the CEO of Nu Deco. But all this to say, after a couple years of our success, both writing as a composer for him and me as conducting, we finally had enough behind us to say, let's do this right. Let's really make this happen. And we applied for a Knight Foundation grant a few years ago. I think it was 2014, if I'm correct now. And we had this idea of Nu Deco. What is a 21st century orchestra going to look like? What kind of music are they going to play? And we believe that music of Massive Attack and LCD and Sound System and Daft Punk and Radiohead and Jamiroquai was just as valid and as important as Bach and Beethoven and Brahms, and then obviously supporting living composers was a really important aspect of the whole thing. And so we kind of like threw it in a big pot, started around, and came up with this sort of product. I mean, we kind of stumbled on it, which was a concert that involved collaborations. It involved music from other genres, genre bending by taking these composers that aren't in the classical music world and creating through composed new works for a chamber orchestra, and then also celebrating living composers. And we presented that to the Knight Foundation. They loved our idea, and they gave us $75,000 for a 2-year challenge grant. So we had to go out and raise $75,000 to get that money, but they were very loose about it. It could be in kind, it could be other ways. They just, they'll give you $35,000 a year or 32.5 a year as long as you raised that to match it. And we matched it real quick because we brought some musicians into Sam's house, fed them some food and gave them some drinks and said, this is our idea. This is what we want to call it. Would you guys be down to make a video for us? Would you be down to like come together and try this out? And they did. They gave us a whole day. We made videos. We obviously put up our own money to get this stuff off the ground. And it all sort of came together, and we got the money, we got the video, we made a website, and we put on a concert, and the concert was phenomenally successful. It was in was it June? Yeah, it was like June 4th of 2015 we put on I can't believe it's only been that long. It's crazy. We put on that concert, and it went really well, and we learned that there was a hunger and a thirst for what it was we were providing, and people in Miami really gravitated toward our sound. And we had a few radio interviews that kind of put our sound out there, and people were like freaking out, like, what is this? Who are you guys? What are you doing? Like, Miami, what? Like, this is so nuts. And there was a little bit of a vacuum for new music, obviously, in Miami. I mean, other cities have stuff kind of like this. I mean, Alarmo Sound in New York is similar, not quite like us, but they do cross-genre bending too, and they do a lot of like new composers. Wild Up, our friends in LA, they do interesting things. So every major big culturally relevant city has something of this nature, whether it be a new music ensemble or a crossover group. Miami just didn't have one. So if we didn't do it, we felt like someone else would. So we did it, and we just tried to do it with quality and with respect to the musicians, of course, and the community, especially millennials, all the way up through, the older generation. They just really gravitated to it. What shocked us was people who were 80 years old were walking out saying Daft Punk was their favorite thing, and then another shocker was like 25-year-olds telling us they came to hear Daft Punk and like really enjoyed Adam Schoenberg's music and the new music. So it was just like a whole turning everything on its head, and it just showed us that like not only are people craving authentic musical experience that are unique and compelling, but like we provided a space for content that was really relevant to society today. And because we found that niche, and because we're being relevant to society today, it's really sort of taken off now.
That's so amazing. And I love how you discovered that, I guess even as
definitely.
Musicians, yeah. Like even as musicians, we think, oh yeah, the old people want to hear Beethoven and the young people don't give a shit about it. Right. And it's like you just found out that it's not even true.
So not true, because it's about the experience and it's about the quality. And if you provide a compelling experience, a diverse and dynamic program, and you bring it at the highest quality possible, it speaks to everyone. Now, it helps that we're a chamber orchestra. We're not as expensive as the New York Philharmonic or the Cleveland Orchestra. It helps that our venue is really intimate. We call our venue, which is the Lightbox at Goldman Warehouse, our 26th musician, because it kind of envelops you as an audience member. So that, we had a lot of pluses there. And then Sam's writing is like phenomenal. I mean, he's been commissioned by orchestras all over the world now, but his writing is just really speaks to people now. And it's hard to explain until you hear it. But it just really is relevant. And society today respects and goes toward it. And that is what I think the secret sauce is Sam's writing mixed with all these new composers and new ideas. And another thing is a lot of organizations are like one person, like kind of running it. We started out as two and then added a third to help us with the finances, my best friend from high school. So it was like three best friends together, like starting it. It was like a very beautiful experience that like three of us came together and like really made it happen, And of course I was the conductor of it, Sam was the composer of it, and Dan helped us with the finances. But like, because we never made a decision on our own, it was always like a three-way sort of hive mind. We made a lot of great decisions in the very early stages that set us up for long-term success. And that includes the content and the music. Sam and I have very similar tastes for sure. I mean, we're different people, but we sort of live in the similar sound world of what we enjoy and the composers we like. And because we live in that similar sound world of genres and music and styles, we are able to come up with programs that we both loved. And if I just did music I love, I don't think people would like it. But since we do music that we love, I think people really gravitated toward it because it was always a decision that we made hand in hand with each other, not separate. Like, I want to do this piece and you do that piece, which is a lot of times how orchestras program, unfortunately. Not because they want to, it's just because the music director comes in and says, this is what the orchestra needs to do. It's going to make the orchestra better. It's healthy for them to do this and do that. And we need to do that because it's good for the musicians and it's good for the orchestra and the artistic quality. Well, that's all true and said and done, but are you speaking to your community? Are you relevant?
Exactly.
Are you making an impact with people? Are you transforming lives? Are you creating experiences that are compelling and transformative?
And isn't that the question? That's the question, right? Are you relevant? Like, are your decisions about repertoire based on any like actual information that you're getting from the community, from the people that come and hear the concerts,
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. It's been a process, an amazing process, but I've learned so much, and it's informing so many of my decisions I make, both with my programming in Amarillo and with other orchestras, and it's been a lot of fun to like live into this space.
That's so cool. So, and I saw that you do educational stuff with Nu Deco. You have do you have kids concerts, or how does?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of made a name for myself in the very beginning stages of my conducting career by doing very, fun education concerts, and again, I had Sam Hyken helping me with arrangements and creating content because, he writes that music that really speaks to people. And so, I started, my first professional orchestral conducting position was with the Charlotte Symphony, and I was charged with running their education and outreach series. And so, they got really popular. People really connected with my vibe and my energy and the music we were doing. And from there, other orchestras heard about it and started hiring me, and it just kind of like spawned from there. So, kids are much easier than adults. Oh my gosh, adults are challenging sometimes. Kids are not. They're just so real. They're so like in it. They're so authentic. They're so like, just give them something good and they'll go for it. And Nu Deco is no different. We're going to always try to do cool and fun and educational programs that really transform kids. And the cool thing about what we do is that we're going to my hometown where I was raised in Homestead, which hasn't had an orchestra down there in 40, 50 years. And there's a brand new hall that just reopened. Well, it's actually a really old hall called the Seminole Theater. And it just reopened in the last year. And, it used to be like a gym of a theater in Homestead. It was like the bridge between the Keys and South Miami and everything. But, it just went into derelict and then the Hurricane Andrew in 92 destroyed it even further, and it just never really got off the ground. Well, they reopened back up. Nu Deco took off. It was the perfect harmony and of bringing two institutions together, and they love us coming down there. We love going down there, and it means the world to me that I get to go return back to my hometown and give back, like I said in the beginning, what it is I love so much to the next generation. And Homestead's a real immigrant community now. It's after the Hurricane Andrew, it just became a real immigrant community. And so these kids would never, ever have an opportunity to hear music like this unless we were there. And it just means the world to us. So that's a big part of what I do for sure. Yeah. And we have, in Amarillo, I do symphony kids, and Carnegie Hall's linked up. There's a lot of that on my plate every season for sure.
That's so awesome. Yeah, I saw that you do a lot of guest conducting. We got, what do you have? Grand Rapids, and what else?
Yeah.
What else are you doing guest conducting with?
This is a great year. This is the first year where like the busyness isn't as hectic, but the quality is the highest. And that's the zone I'm really happy to be in, because in past years I've been really busy. I would say yes to everything, and that takes a toll on you. Relationships are hard, life is hard, balance is difficult, but you also want to get your name out there, and it's like a whole, like, you got to decide what to say no to, what to say yes to. And for me, it's never about the money. I always feel like the money will come, but it was like the experience of being on the podium is important too. So it's like a lot. But this coming season, I feel is like the first season where every gig I have is like one of the most quality gigs I could ever imagine for. And not to belittle any other gigs I've had in the past, it's just, I took things to take things. Now I'm taking things that like really mean something to me. So for Grand Rapids, I'm going back. It's a return engagement, which I'm excited about, and doing a special project of new music with them. And, I'm returning back to the Houston Symphony, which is, a phenomenal orchestra. I had a great experience with them last year, and they invited me back. And I have a debut with the Detroit Symphony this year, which is exciting because it's my first time with them. And then One of the more intriguing things for me this year is I've been tapped to conduct the entire Declassified series for the National Symphony Orchestra. And I got in front of them last year on a very small little outreach concert, and there was a great chemistry between myself and the musicians, and they saw what I was doing in Miami and around, and they tapped me to do this series. And this year I'm doing some really crazy epic programs with them where I get to premiere a new piece by Bryce Dessner, who I don't know if you know is the composer of the Academy Award-winning motion picture The Reverend, and the music he won an Academy Award for. And then I'm doing like cool crossover projects with Whitehall, this electric cellist, and Christelez Bacon, he's a beatboxer, and then Ben Folds again. I'm doing a curated sort of program with him, and beyond the amazing crazy season Nu Deco has and Amarillo does, I feel like very fortunate that this year the guest conducting is really interesting and high quality orchestras and really fun projects that I really believe in, and that's hopefully the space I can kind of stay in for a while.
Yeah, that's awesome. And some of these people you've mentioned, they were kind of a little bit on my radar because of Facebook, and I want to talk a little bit about Facebook because that was how I could know what you are doing.
Oh yeah,
because of social media.
Powerful,
like I'm tapping into the Facebook, Insta.
Yeah,
and you're out there, you're doing it, and it's so. Tell me about how social media is for you, like getting on there, and what's that like?
I mean,
how are you using it?
Well, I sort of had a flip with it. I mean, look, I've been on Facebook for years and years and years, and I created a professional page a couple of years ago, but it was always like it was like a little ego driven. Like, look what I'm doing. I get to do this, and people don't really connect to that and resonate to that. People want to know that you're a real person. They want to see that you're a real authentic human being. And so you can't just put up, your next concert and how cool it is you're working with this orchestra. You got to put up like a yoga pose, or here's this cool city I'm in. Look at this cool piece of art, or here's a beautiful photo of a picture of flying out of a plane on my way to my next thing, or here's some kids I worked with. You just got to come across on social media not only as your best version of yourself, but it has to be a super positive version, because people gravitate toward positivity on social media. That's one thing. The images you put off have to be kind of compelling and epic. You have to take great photos. I mean, it's a whole thing. And then the main thing is being real, just being a real person. They got to feel like you're a real person. So I sort of switched that. I had some help, obviously. My amazing and entrepreneurial girlfriend, who's a social media queen, kind of gave me some lessons in what it is to do, and it's definitely working. I mean, I've only been in the last few months more engaged with that side of things, maybe in the last 6 months, but it's starting to really snowball and become its own little beast, and it's a powerful tool. And orchestras don't get it yet. They're still like a little antiquated. I mean, Nu Deco gets it, but like your Facebook followers, the people who come are your best marketers. They're the people who are going to turn around and share what it is you're talking about and be your loudest mouthpiece for what it is you do. And it took me a while to get that and understand that, but it's so true. And it's such a grassroots, from the ground operation. I mean, that's how Obama killed it. That's how like these politicians who are killing it do it. It has to be grassroots driven. And you do that by having the followers, the people who love you, the people who appreciate you, sharing and posting and reposting what it is you're doing. And so you got to compel them to do that. And once you start compelling them to do that, then the network just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So social media is an extremely powerful tool that I don't think people fully get and understand how to use yet. And I've actually been asked by several orchestras to help them with their social media. And it's cool because like now I find that it's not that difficult. It's just really not that hard to put together. And the thing is, it's also a slippery slope. You can kind of like get lost in it and you do too much of it too. So you have to like balance it out a bit. You don't want to be too much, but you want to be enough. You got to look like you're busy, but not too busy.
Yeah.
You can't be ego driven, but it's got to be, it's got to be
Yeah.
like real. It's like there's a lot behind it, but once you find the right formula for yourself, you just got to stay on top of it,
Yeah.
And so it's been a very powerful tool that I found very helpful, not to necessarily boost my career, but it's definitely helped me get the word out and the message out of who I am as an artist. And that's important because then people see that and be like, oh, I want to engage him because of this. I want to engage him because of that. And that's happened. I've gotten gigs because of Facebook. I've met people through Facebook that I've worked with. It's a very, very powerful tool. And Instagram as well. It's hugely important in the future of classical music to be as relevant as possible. And that's where people get their content these days. People get their content from their social media feed. That's it. Like that's how they get their content. So you either, change with the times or die trying.
Totally. Yeah. And, I think what you said about orchestras, where'd you go? Hold on.
Yeah.
It went away. Are you there still? Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things you just said about orchestras, what I notice about your social media too, is that it's like, it's you. You're the guy who's like the representer. You're the person that we get to meet because like
Right.
Nu Deco is it's filled with, I don't know how many players you have, but it's impossible really you can't just pick someone and you can't feature everybody. So you're
Right.
like, you're the face of them,
Right.
and we get to
Right.
meet you and get to know you. And then you are, what they are. So it's really cool. I love it.
Yeah.
Tell me about yoga. Why do you do yoga?
Oh, yeah. Well, yoga came to me, a couple years ago, I lost my parents and I lost them both back to back. And it was a very difficult time in my life. And I lost my mother first and she was sick and, it was coming and I knew it and it was a whole thing. And, it was all going to happen and it's normal. I mean, people lose their parents, just, you just hope you lose them as late as you can and they go out peacefully. And unfortunately, my mother was sick and diagnosed with a disease that was degenerative and exponential. And as it approached, it became harder and harder to sort of deal with emotionally, of course. Well, she ended up passing and I remember I was in an airport. I was in Dallas, and I was with a friend. We had just did a concert. It was my first concert back with the Amarillo Symphony, and she passed away in like the end of January of 2014. And then March, it was like mid-March, I had this concert, and I was just like coming back into the real world after that. And I sat down and we were at a restaurant. I was with my buddy. And I started crying, and it just happens. And it would come up, and it was, just conducting concerts in general, super emotional. There's just so much energy put into these things,
Yeah.
and it's like you can't hide who you are on the podium. That's the thing about a conductor. It's like who a person is. Sorry, I think I lost you for a second.
Yeah. What's going on? Right there.
Yeah, yeah. Hello.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I don't know why,
Yeah.
but there you are. There's your box. Okay.
Yeah. It keeps going. I see it going off and on. You tell me when it does, and I'll stop talking. But conducting a concert's an emotional experience. It's just a lot of energy, and having lost her, I was just in a very sad space, of course. And I met this girl. She sat next to me, my friend and I, and she started chatting us up. And my friend was hitting on her, whatever. And she ends up telling us like, oh, she works for this like self-help guru and blah, blah, blah. And she looked at me right in the eye and she said, I lost my dad last year. He was shot and killed in LA. And I started doing yoga. She's like, have you ever done yoga? I was like, yeah, I've been thinking about it. I keep hearing about yoga. Everyone's doing yoga. It's like a whole mainstream thing. Yeah. And she's like, no, you should really go and try it. And I was like, okay. And she's like, but don't go try it for like a day. She's like, do it for a month. Just go do yoga a couple days a week for a month. And I was like, whatever, la. So I did. I got back to Charlotte and I started doing yoga, and it started helping. I started to feel something, and then unfortunately, like a month later, my dad was killed in an accident, And it was just like this double whammy. And I was so lost. I didn't know what to do. And I was just like completely like, oh my God, what is life all about? And I just kept plugging away. I had all these gigs with orchestras. I was just like, my dad would be really pissed if I just like fell off the face of the earth. Like, I know he'd be pissed. And I did that when my mom passed. I took a lot of time to reflect. I didn't go back to work for a while. I canceled concerts. I just did my own thing. I mean, the week I knew my mom was going to pass, I had a gig with Atlanta Symphony I canceled. I had a gig with Amarillo I canceled. I wiped the books clean. But with my dad, it was like, he would have been passed. He was like a go-get-'em kind of guy, like no excuses man. He would have been mad if I didn't continue working. I saw the connections lost, right?
Yeah, it just got, okay. There, you're back now.
Yeah. So yeah, he was just like a go get him, get on with life kind of guy. And I just like, well, I'm going to do that. I'm going to continue to do all my gigs. And I didn't have that many, but and so yoga, I just kept pushing through with yoga, and I was crying at the end of yoga sessions at the Shavasana. And it was like this spiritual experience to have the yoga as I developed, better at it, to go along with all the sadness and loss I was dealing with in losing both my parents back to back, and it just became a spiritual journey for me to keep doing it. And then there was like this thing that happened once I started to get better at yoga and understand it more and like appreciate it and dive into it. It helped my conducting, and I tell this to everybody. Yoga helps you in whatever field. If you're a teacher, a school teacher, it helps you. If you're a mechanic, it helps you. If you're a conductor, it helps you. If you're a doctor, it helps you. There's something about it that grounds you in a very holistic way, slowly but surely over time. It's a practice. They don't call it yoga perfect. They call it yoga practice, and it's like anything you practice, you get better at it. And for me, the practice of yoga brought a lot more centering to my life, brought centering to my heart and soul. It made me a more grounded individual as I was on the podium. A great conductor is extremely grounded. You mentioned to me, Riccardo Muti. I mean, he walks out on the podium, he's grounded. That man is not moving. He's just a rock on that podium. And he may move around and do things, but like people gravitate to him being grounded. And yoga is all about grounding your heels into the ground and rooting yourself down and really building yourself from the bottom up. And I just noticed that the parallels were so incredibly like similar. It was like one thing just helped the other. And my focus got better, my studying got better, my determination to be a better musician was there and being fed by yoga. And at the same turn, I'd go back to yoga with this experience of how my conducting was better because of it, and I'd want to get better at yoga. So it was like, lost you again. Let's see if it goes back on. No. It's okay.
Why is it doing this? Oh, there we go.
Yeah. As long as it's not bubbly, I can stop and wait for it to go back on. I don't care.
Okay.
Because it tells me when it does it.
Okay.
But so, I found that they were both helping each other a lot. And then because of that, I just got more and more into the philosophy of it. And this last summer, I decided to, really dive into yoga all the way. And I got my teacher training, and now I can carry yoga around with me wherever I went, because that was becoming an issue. Like, my time on the road is very limited. I don't have time to always find a good studio. And then sometimes I'd find a studio that wasn't very good, and I'd be upset and it'd waste a couple hours of my day. And I was like, So now I can carry the yoga with me because I studied it and got my teacher training, and I get to I'll turn up the heat in the hotel room and just get an hour in and feel great and get on with my day, And so it's been something I recommend to all classical musicians. I know some string players are like, oh, my wrist hurt. Well, it's because you're not doing yoga right yet. You have to learn how to balance yourself and build yourself from the ground up. And I know a lot of string players who do yoga, and they benefit greatly from it. So it's a thing that I think classical musicians should all do. But at the same time, for me personally, it was a spiritual journey that led to so many more unlocking of doors in my heart and soul that helped me to grow and evolve as a person, that then again informed the conducting. So it's all kind of hand in hand now.
Okay, I'm taking a yoga class tonight, Giacomo.
You got to do it, girl. It's going to help you with your podcast.
You convinced me.
Definitely.
You convinced me.
Good.
It's awesome. So I have a couple more questions.
I'm sorry. I blab a lot.
Oh, no, I love it. It's great. It's great. One of the questions I really, really wanted to ask was, I saw on social media that you were driving this sweet blue car, and it had the hashtag. Baby. It had the hashtag Camaro, what was it? Camaro 2016. And I want to know how you got that sponsorship. Like how did that come about?
Yeah, so it was a branding opportunity that fell in my lap through social media. So
Wow.
I'm not sure how or which platform, but GMC, their advertising arm, reached out to me because they saw what I do online, and they saw, they were doing this movers and shakers sort of organic grassroots thing, and they wanted to tap some people in Miami, and they saw that I was a mover and shaker in Miami with Nu Deco, and they reached out to me and see if I'd be interested to drive around a car in a week, take a few pics, and post it. Well, I went overboard with it, of course, and took videos and had my girlfriend help me do some things, and just made some videos with it, and kept that car and tried to connect it to all the things I'm doing around Miami, and just like a co-branding opportunity. And if you see now, GMC has this big commercial with my friend Kazim Abdullah. He's a conductor. He's African American. He's a great guy, great conductor. They have this whole, it's on Monday Night Football now. It's like this huge campaign they've done with classical music and musicians and GMC. So they're really reaching out to artists, and I think they're trying to make themselves seem a little more authentic and younger, because GMC has always been looked at as a sort of older brand in a way. And and I was just one of the ones they tapped into for social media, and it worked out really well. And I'm actually trying to see if I can continue that sponsorship throughout the season with Nu Deco for our guest artists. So it's a partnership that was developed through the social media aspects of what I do. And I have to say that it's not the only one that's happened. There's been a few other little things I can't really mention yet that have kind of fallen on my lap that, has come my way because of the activity I do. And that's what I'm saying. Social media is so powerful. People have no idea. People just don't get it yet. They don't see how powerful it is. Even my mom's friend, actually, she's funny. It's my best friend's mom. She's like my mama number two. She tweets like crazy. She tweeted that her washing machine broke before the warranty was up, and they didn't want to cover it. And the next day she had a brand new washer arrive at her door because the company didn't want her tweeting about it, And then she tweeted about her
so great.
I know. And then she tweeted about her GMC console, the electronic console, died. And she tweeted about it, and she took it down to GMC, and they said, oh, it was after warranty when it broke, by a week or two. And they said they're not going to do it. So she tweeted about it, and the company called her and said, bring it right back down. We'll fix it for you. So it's people don't get it. Social media is an incredible platform to put your voice out there. It's just, it's been amazing. It's been a really amazing experience to find that, because of what I do, people are gravitating toward these things and trying to help and be a part of it. And I find that very humbling, and I'm very honored to have these opportunities.
That's so cool. That is really inspiring and cool. So, okay, I have one more question for you, Giacomo.
Yeah.
Who in the classical world inspires you, and tell me why in one sentence?
Ooh. Can it be two people, please?
Yeah, you possible? Can do two.
Okay, yes. I'll do one. I'll give them each one sentence.
Okay.
The first one is the conductor and composer Esa-Pekka Salonen. He inspires me because he's always innovating, both as a conductor, as a programmer of orchestras, and as a composer. And he is engaging to everyone he works with through not only his personality, but his social media platforms, and how he connects to audiences in a very visceral and palpable way. I'm obsessed with his conducting and his recordings and his output. I'm blown away by his intellectualism. He's just an unbelievable person. The second person would have to be very obvious for me, and probably for many people, would be Yo-Yo Ma. Yo-Yo Ma is a human being on this planet that is continuously striving for some sort of epic artistry that is beyond anything of himself and anyone. He is always changing the game, creating new things, working with different people that you would never expect him to work with, from hip-hop dancers to country and bluegrass musicians to composers of living and past, and is always trying to change the game. And I find his authenticity extremely inspiring and beautiful. And he's just an incredibly warm and generous person to be around, who is just an amazing philosopher on top of it all. So those two are my biggest inspirations, I would have to say.
I love it. Oh my gosh. I agree with you about Yo-Yo Ma so much. And I have to check out more about with Esa-Pekka because I haven't seen as much as I should. But
yeah,
this is great.
He's amazing. I mean, he had that whole app with Apple. His music is incredible. He's one of the most, I mean, I just think he's cool as a conductor. He's just like cool as a cat. He just kills it. And, you know, they were basically begging him to be the music director of the New York Philharmonic. And he's like, nah, I'm good. You know, like it's like, yeah, I want to compose more now and do my own thing. And, you know, it's funny. You talk about like what advice I would give to a musician, like who like maybe questions their path or who's been doing the same thing for a while. It's like, you got to follow your heart, you know, all the time. You got to follow your heart. And that will lead you in the right direction. And Esa-Pekka follows his heart without a doubt. He wears it on his shirt sleeve. You hear him talk and he's talking from his heart. Yo-Yo Ma, that guy's heart is dripping off of him. It's just like all heart. And like, if I were to give any advice to anybody who wants to do it. Okay, 1 second.
Oh, there you are. Okay,
yeah, both those guys follow their heart. And, you know, if I were to give any advice to anybody about like what path they should go down or what they should do, it's to follow your heart. It will lead you in the right direction. And both those guys do it. I mean, Yo-Yo Ma wears it on his shirt sleeve. His heart is like pouring out of him. And Esa-Pekka is Finnish, and it's a different way of expressing it, but he's following his heart and his gut. And, you know, and look at you now with your podcast. It's amazing. You're following your heart. And that's what we all got to do in life. If we all just follow our heart a little bit more, and things would be a little more peaceful around here, you know, around these parts.
Around these parts. No, I totally agree. And that's such a great way to end this interview with the advice of follow your heart. That is just, it's beautiful, Giacomo. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing this interview. It means so much to me. I really appreciate it. And I really look forward to seeing so much more from you. I know you're going to be doing great things, and I can't wait to keep watching you.
Oh, well, this has been amazing. I've had so much fun talking to you about all this stuff. I'm really honored that I'm your first podcast interviewee. I hope you have some success with this endeavor. I know you will. You're such a funny, engaging person, and I believe in everything you're doing. And if there's any further help I could always provide, you just let me know. And I'm just honored that we had this opportunity to speak today.
Thank you so much, Giacomo.
All right, Trace. Be good, girl.
Thanks for tuning in. Okay, bye.